Good Monday, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Conversations Daily News. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. We, of course, have your news headlines coming up on this Monday. We have the Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich, and in today's Entertainment Spotlight, you're being part of my conversation with acclaimed actor and producer Bill Duke. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversations Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Monday headlines. In national news, jurors in ex-officer's high-profile trial face heavy burden. One prospective juror's voice quivered as she told attorneys during jury selection that she feared for her family's safety if chosen for the panel that will decide the fate of a white former police officer charged with killing George Floyd. When the judge excused her, the woman exhaled in relief. Jurors at all trials feel pressure knowing their decisions will alter lives, but the weight on jurors in Minneapolis is in a whole different category as they'll be asked whether to assign guilt in the death of a black man that prompted some of the largest protests in U.S. history. Bystander video of the confrontation is expected to be a key exhibit at trial, with opening statements set for today. It shows Derek Chauvin using his knee to pin Floyd's neck to the ground for about 9 minutes during his arrest last May. Floyd cried he couldn't breathe and called for his mother before his body went limp. A looming question is whether Chauvin, charged with murder and manslaughter, can get a fair trial with so much pressure on jurors and with some potentially fearing the consequences to the city and the country should they reach a verdict others oppose. A high fence installed around the courthouse for the trial is a daily reminder for jurors of security concerns. On some days, protesters gather just beyond it, holding signs that read, "Convict Derek Chauvin," and "The world is watching." Jurors are well aware that Floyd's death led to months of protests in Minneapolis and cities nationwide. They're aware, too, that thieves took advantage of demonstrations to break into, ransack, and sometimes burn down stores. A judge denied a request to change the trial's venue, a ruling Chauvin could cite on appeal if convicted. Appeals with change of venue disputes at their core are rare, but not unprecedented. In more national news, virus fight stalls in early hotspots New York and New Jersey. A year after becoming a global epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic, New York and New Jersey are back atop the list of U.S. states with the highest rates of infection. Even as the vaccination campaign has ramped up, the number of new infections in New Jersey has crept up by 37% in a little more than a month to about 23,600 every 7 days. About 54,600 people in New York tested positive for the virus in the last week, a number that has begun to inch up recently. The two states now rank number 1 and number 2 in new infections per capita among U.S. states. New Jersey has been reporting about 647 new cases for every 100,000 residents over the past 14 days. The situation in New York and New Jersey mirrors a national trend that has seen case numbers inch up in recent days. The U.S. is averaging nearly 62,000 cases a day, up from 54,000 2 weeks ago. The lack of improvement or even backsliding in recent weeks has raised concerns that the states are opening too quickly and people letting down their guard too much, just as potentially more contagious variants of the virus are circulating more widely. In more national news, Democrats assail Georgia law, make case for voting overhaul. Democrats have seized on new voting restrictions in Georgia to focus attention on the fight to overhaul federal election laws, setting up a slow-building standoff that carries echoes of the civil rights battles of a half a century ago. In fiery speeches, pointed statements, and tweets, party leaders on Friday decried the law, signed the day before by the state's Republican governor, as aimed at suppressing black and Latino votes and a threat to democracy. In entertainment news, Eddie Murphy inducted into NAACP Image Awards Hall of Fame. Eddie Murphy was inducted into the NAACP Image Awards Hall of Fame at the organization's show that highlighted work by entertainers and athletes of color. After Murphy accepted his induction award Saturday night, the actor-comedian said he was very moved by the honor. He was presented the award by his longtime friend and Coming to America co-star Arsenio Hall. And finally, in more entertainment news, Osbourne off the talk after inquiry into racism discussion. CBS says Sharon Osbourne would no longer appear on its daytime show The Talk after a heated on-air discussion about racism earlier this month. The network said Friday Osbourne had decided to leave the show after a review that found in part that Sharon's behavior toward her co-host during the March 10th episode did not align with our values for a respectful workplace. The network said an internal investigation said the show's co-host, including Osbourne and Cheryl Underwood, were not properly prepared by the show's team for a discussion on race. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's now time for the Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich. Enjoy.
Hi, this is Mary Ellen with your Truth of the Day. Forgiveness is heart medicine. Forgiveness is a healing tool in your life. You may choose to use it at any moment. It is the most powerful heart medicine you have available. Forgiveness teaches you to release your sadness in order to find gratitude for what you have learned. Forgiveness gives you the joy and freedom of knowing you are never alone. Even when you are by yourself, the power of forgiveness sends you love, the love of self. Remember, forgiveness is not necessarily about forgiving the other person. It is always about forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for listening to that other person or doing something you knew you should not have done. Forgive yourself for not listening to your knowings or God. Forgiveness takes you from pain and isolation and fear all the way back to knowing God. Today, know that no more fearful dreams will come now that you rest in God. Enjoy the day.
Bill Duke is featured in today's Entertainment Spotlight. We're here on Conversations Daily News. For Conversations Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with the Entertainment Spotlight. Acclaimed actor and producer Bill Dukes rejoined me on Conversations Live, the radio show, recently to talk about the impact of a little-known figure in history, Captain Robert Smalls, and why his story is so important to be told. Here's a bit of our conversation.
Captain Smalls, for anyone who's searching online, there's been a lot of talk recently now about him. Why is it so important, do you feel like, Mr. Duke, that a story like this is told?
Well, it's a story of hope, a story about a history that's not usually told, a man that went from slavery to, when people think about slavery, they think about these poor people who were whipped, etc. But there are a lot of people who came inside of slavery of it to do incredible things. And
right.
This is the courage, the tenacity, the persistence of never giving up of a man to represent many people who are going through that.
Yeah. Mr. Duke, you were breaking up there a little bit at the end there. I got the gist of what you were saying, but it was breaking up there at the very end. But I do appreciate what you said, though, about how we sometimes think about slavery and those who unfortunately found themselves under slavery. So do you feel that, especially now that a lot of us have read your story and know your background and what you've been able to achieve, do you feel as though this is a story that will find a connection with audiences literally around the world?
I think it's not a black story; it's a human story, and it talks to all people that have suffered through anything. And once you are confronted with obstacles in life, you have one of two choices: you can give up and just be a victim of the situation, or you can fight with tenacity so that you never give up. And I think that the humanity of that gives people hope.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Conversations Daily News. We'll be back with you guys on tomorrow with more news, Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich, and of course your Entertainment Spotlight. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Daily News today. Let's make it a great one.